can imagine.
Okay, so
Yes,
good
yes.
afternoon. Welcome to this CE Hub Feasibility Study Call webinar. If you wouldn't mind all putting yourself on mute while I give a presentation, and then there will be plenty of time for questions and answers afterwards. So my name is Fiona Charnley. I'm a Professor of Circular Innovation at the University of Exeter, and I'm one of the directors of the Circular Economy Hub, which is part of the NICER programme. And this is our third round of funding for feasibility studies. This is the third and final round. So the purpose of this webinar is to talk you through what the call entails and how you apply. So if you want to put any of your questions that you might have in the chat as I'm speaking, or feel free to come on afterwards and ask your question. I've also got Imogen Hosey with me, who is our CE Hub administrator. And Katie Cook might be coming in, hopefully, shortly.
Come back and see what they say. But if
So I think there's someone still with an open microphone. So if you could mute yourself, please. That would be great. Brilliant. Okay, so just to provide you with a bit of background to the NICER programme. So NICER stands for National Interdisciplinary Circular Economy Research Programme, and NICER is one of the largest UKRI investments to date to accelerate and upscale our transition towards a circular economy in the UK. It's important not only because it's the largest investment, so the investment is £30 million, but it's also supported by all of the research councils. So it's a cross-programme initiative, and it's also funded through the Strategic Priorities Fund, which means it's very closely aligned to our government strategies, and therefore is supported by DEFRA, BEIS and other devolved administrations. So the NICER programme is made up of 5 individual circular economy centres of excellence, each focusing on a particular resource flow. So we have one on textiles, construction minerals, metals, technology metals and chemicals. And then we have a coordinating hub to add value to the programme as a whole. And we're interested in some of the cross-cutting research themes that exist between different disciplines and sectors. And one of the mechanisms that we use to engage the broader circular economy community and carry out interdisciplinary research is that we have some discretionary funding that we use to fund feasibility studies. So that's what we're here for today. So that's the NICER programme. I think the next slide tells you a bit more about the aims and objectives, the vision of the NICER programme. So as I said, we're aiming to accelerate interdisciplinary research, innovation and impact to scale up and accelerate the UK's transition towards a circular economy. And the overall programme has 3 key aims. So first of all, to accelerate our understanding and develop solutions to enable the circularity of specific resource flows. Secondly, we want to provide national leadership, coordinate and drive knowledge exchange. And then finally, to embed research by involving businesses, policymakers, consumers, and the wider community at every part of the programme. So this is a very applied programme. We have match funding by a number of different organisations from each of these resource flows and sectors of the centres, but also other businesses who are interested in implementing circular economy. So the NICER programme is actually halfway through. We've just successfully passed our midterm review, and we have just over 18 months left. So the whole programme runs up until the end of 2024. So as I mentioned, this call for feasibility studies is part of the CE Hub's remit to engage academics, businesses and policymakers outside of the NICER centres. So we really aim to try and collaborate with as many different stakeholders and disciplines as possible. So the fund aims to provide the wider circular economy community with the opportunity to undertake interdisciplinary cross-value chain, speculative and potentially high impact research to accelerate innovative solutions around circular economy adoption and implementation. So this is in collaboration with the NICER programme. We're really interested in proposals that consider different scales, so including regional and place-based research. We're interested in funding proposals that develop new collaborations between sectors and disciplines. And importantly, we would really like to see proposals that either involve or are led by early career researchers. And we are taking the typical traditional UKRI definition of what an early career researcher is. And you'll see, you can follow the link here to access that definition. And also we're interested in projects that involve collaboration with industry and/or policy partners. And that's either providing in-kind support or direct match funding. So as I mentioned, this is our third round of feasibility study funding. And we, for this round in particular, are really interested in looking at the specific enablers or barriers to enable or to progress circular economy adoption and implementation. And we're particularly interested in more of the social element and perspectives around circular economy. So here listed on this slide are some of the topics that we are interested in funding studies in, but we're not limited to these. So anything really that looks at the adoption of the circular economy, but from more of a broader societal perspective. So it could be that you were interested in looking at the public understanding of circular economy and net zero, the role of the circular economy in addressing complex societal challenges, such as things like healthcare or the cost of living crisis, the role of the media, for example, and public opinion, and how that can enable the scaling of circular economy solutions. We're very interested in user behaviour, and particularly user behaviour associated with the implementation of circular business models. We're very keen advocates of equality, diversity and inclusion, and how that impacts on our adoption of circular economy. Analysis, measurement and demonstration of the social benefits of the circular economy. Measurements and KPIs are one of the core themes of the NICER programme. And so really looking at that from a social perspective is of interest. Or anything that lies around the area of change in behaviour or mindset. And that can be from households or individuals, but also associated with businesses or indeed policymakers. So that kind of transitional change in behaviour and mindset that needs to take place. So these are just some of the examples of types of research that we're interested in. But as I said, the fund is not limited just to these. So anything that falls in that broader kind of social remit is of interest. So the expectations for delivery, if you are successful in securing funding for a feasibility study, you'll be expected to deliver a tangible piece of work that would achieve a specific output, such as early stage concept development, decision-making tools or methods, or demonstrator projects focusing on evidencing the transferability of circular economy principles across different scales or disciplines or industrial sectors. As I mentioned, the NICER programme is very applied in nature. We're very focused on impact and bringing about tangible impact for business or for policy, in addition to academia. And the beauty of these types of feasibility studies are they tend to demonstrate research that wouldn't necessarily be traditionally funded through a responsive mode or a wider EPSRC or ESRC call. They actually allow the demonstration of ideas and concepts that are perhaps still in the early stages. So this is really seed funding to help researchers test out an idea and to demonstrate its feasibility, and then possibly, and we would really encourage that then a feasibility study would lead to you writing a proposal for a larger grant. So, as I mentioned, we're keen to support new collaborations of all different sorts that otherwise would not have happened. And we really welcome applications with leading participation from people drawn from all parts of the circular economy community. So we're really trying to reach out to those parts of the community that perhaps haven't won circular economy related funding or are quite new to the area, but perhaps you're interested in bringing forwards ideas from your disciplines that would help that transition towards a circular economy and increase our knowledge and understanding. So the funding available, as I said, this is the third round and we have £100,000 available at full economic cost. So funding will be awarded at 80% FEC, as is typical of all UKRI and Research Council funding. So individual feasibility studies will be funded to a maximum of £50,000 FEC. This doesn't mean that you have to put in proposals for £50,000. We'd also accept smaller projects where you're testing out, a few ideas, or you are bidding for money that would help you develop a new collaboration, for example. The duration of feasibility studies should be between 9 and 12 months, and all of our feasibility studies must be completed before the end of August 2024. Also, we encourage applications where a portion of the project costs are met by industry funding. And that's just on the right, this was our previous calls, and then this call has been launched in February. So as I mentioned, the CE Hub and the wider NICER programme is extremely committed to equality, diversity and inclusion. And so we particularly welcome applications from teams that are diverse in terms of protected characteristics and also disciplinary areas. And we really want to encourage support and respect ideas from everyone and ensure our inclusive activities are representative of the diverse circular economy community. And obviously circular economy is being implemented and demonstrated by all different parts of our community. And so we're really keen that we try and bring in those different perspectives to this call. So Katie will go into a bit more detail on this shortly, but as part of our commitment to ED&I, we are undertaking a blind review process. So you will be asked to submit an anonymous ED&I monitoring form, and you'll also, when you're presenting your application, be asked to fill in a separate form that provides your personal details and your details of the team aside from your actual proposal itself. And this is so that all of the proposals that we receive for this call are reviewed anonymously. So your background or gender or protected characteristics won't be taken into account and won't be able to bias, either consciously or subconsciously, the review process. We're also really committed to responsible innovation. So responsible innovation is a process that seeks to promote creativity and opportunities for science and innovation that are socially desirable and undertaken in the public interest. We're also very conscious that a lot of the implementation side of circular economy can result in kind of unintended consequences or rebound effects, and we're really keen that any proposals really are conscious of this and consider it within their application. So the application process itself, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Katie Cook, who I believe has now been able to get into the room, and Katie is the CE Hub project manager.
Hi Fiona, sorry about that. I was having difficulties getting into Zoom, but I'm here now. Nice to meet you all. Can I just clarify your number of slide there, Fiona, just so I'm on the right one? Okay.
I'm not sure what number we're on, but it is the slide with application process at the top.
Yeah. I think you were going to talk a little bit about the selection criteria first. I don't know whether you want to flick to the next slide.
Okay.
And I'll start at 15.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. So our awards will be made from a very short written application, followed by a pitch to a multidisciplinary panel. And that panel will involve representatives from industry, UKRI, and possibly some of the NICER centres as well. And successful applicants will be expected to participate in CE Hub events going forwards and required to present their project updates at things such as the NICER programme Circular Economy Showcase. And importantly, we really expect our feasibility study teams, those successful applicants, to form a core part of the Circular Economy Hub and the wider NICER programme community. So we've already got some existing projects and their teams that we've funded in previous rounds, and they're very much formed sort of part of that wider community. So the selection criteria, so this criteria will be used by the review panel when they assess proposals, both at kind of when you submit your application and also at the panel pitch stage. So we're really looking for proposals that are multidisciplinary. They bring together different disciplines, involvement of early career researchers, involvement of industry and or government stakeholders, a commitment to equality, diversity and inclusion. Proposals must complement the work of the NICER programme. So the three objectives that I presented earlier on, we're looking for proposals that complement those. We're also looking for proposals that demonstrate circular economy principles at different scales, across disciplines and industrial sectors. And we're looking for studies with the potential to develop future funding applications. Also, as I mentioned, we're very interested in bringing about impact. And so we're looking for proposals that can demonstrate the potential to create strong dissemination materials and outreach, and pathways to accelerate the implementation and impact of research to ensure that that research is transferred to end users such as industrial practitioners, government or other end users. So these are some of the key dates for this call. So as I mentioned, the call went live in February this year. We're now having the webinar. So the deadline for submissions is Friday, the 28th of April at 5 p.m. Successful teams that are invited to the panel pitch day will be informed by Monday, the 5th of June. And then the panel pitch will actually take place on Friday, the 16th of June. So any teams that do submit an application will need to be available on Friday, the 16th of June. Successful teams will then be notified of the outcome of their feasibility study, and the study will be expected to start by the 1st of September. And as I said, all feasibility studies need to be completed by the end of August 2024. Guidelines on eligibility can be found through this link. Typically, we use the standard UKRI guidelines on eligibility. And what can the fund be used for? So the budget outlined in the proposed feasibility studies can be used for investigators or researchers' time. It can be used for travel and subsistence, appropriate to the delivery of the project, and it can be used for any consumables that you need to carry out the research. As the main grant holder of the CE Hub, University of Exeter will be responsible for allocating funding to successful proposals. So the University of Exeter will reimburse successful applicants as a subcontractor. And as I mentioned, that will be at 80% of the full economic costs. And successful academic institutions will be required to itemise their invoices based on 100% FEC, and then the invoice will be calculated at 80%. Okay, so now I'm going to hand over to Katie to talk through the application.
So I've just got a few slides just to show you what the actual application forms look like. We've got 4 application forms, part 1, part 2 and part 3. So essentially part 1 is the one that you can see on the screen at the moment, and it's just a 1-pager providing title of the feasibility study, the lead institution, the principal investigator, your address, mobile telephone number, email, and the proposed start date and duration of your proposed feasibility study. So I'll just click to that. So the part 2 provides the details for your case for support. So this part of the proposal must not exceed 5 pages of A4 and can include up to 5 figures. Any text after page 5 will not be submitted to the reviewers. As you can appreciate, we do get an awful lot of applications. So if we can keep to the 5 pages, it makes it equitable for everybody. Please can you make sure that every effort to ensure that no personal identification content is included in this second form, and that any references can be made in the appendix, which are not included in the page count. These aren't included in the page count. For the case for support, you'll provide details, the title of the feasibility study, context, your aims and objectives, the benefits of the proposed work, novelty of the proposed work, a short piece about ED&I, equality, diversity and inclusion, and your considerations for your team and the project, and a short outline about the project plan and key deliverables. And also about future funding, how could further funding in this area be obtained? You'll also be asked to tick a box on this section to indicate whether your proposal would align with either the CE Hub itself or one of the national centres. So the Interdisciplinary Centre for Circular Chemical Economy, Circular Metals, Mineral-Based Construction Materials, Technology Metals, or Textiles Circularity Centre. As Fiona's given you the timeline of dates already, the key element here is to make sure that these are submitted by 5 o'clock on the Friday, the 28th of April. So that's part 2. Part 3 is your budget form. It's very simple. It's just one sheet of Excel, and it's asking you to just put down your key expenditure under the 100% that you would be awarded, which would be up to £50,000. You'll have the project title at the top, your details of your directly incurred costs, which include DI staff, DI travel and subsistence, and any DI other, so consumables, for example. Also your directly allocated costs from your DA, from your investigators, so your principal investigators, estates, infrastructure, and other, and these you'll be able to find and get support from your own finance teams within your HEI or the lead HEI, and any other indirect costs. So these will be totaled up. An example would be that the total would be showing up to 50,000, and that would be at full economic cost. Just to say, all of the information on this and the PowerPoint presentation and a recording of this webinar will be shared on the website, so you'll be able to see all of these, and the forms are up there already. Okay, so going on to the ED&I form now, Fiona's just provided a bit of information about that for you. It's very simple, it is anonymous, so it doesn't ask for any names, but it does ask for some key information. We have a strong commitment at the CE Hub and the NICER programme to try to embed equality, diversity and inclusion throughout the whole of the work programme, and also UKRI, the funder, is committed to this. So this provides a bit of information about gender, about age, any disability and ethnicity. Sorry, I can't say that word today. That's all there. All of the published data, as Fiona's also said previously, will be anonymised and will be used for the following purposes. So it's basically to enable us to have that extra criteria so that ED&I is taken into account when the reviewers review the overall applications. Oops, sorry. So finally, all of this information, like I said, is going to be on the website. Successful applicants will be asked to submit their applications by the 28th of April. Then you will be asked, you'll be provided an email to tell you whether you've been successful, or indeed if you've not been successful. And then you'll be invited to a panel pitch day where you'll be asked to present with your team to the panel, the review panel, on Friday the 16th of June. After that, you'll be provided another email to tell you whether you've been successful, and we'll guide you through the setting up process. You'll then be asked to attend a kickoff meeting on Tuesday, the 12th of September, where you'll be brought with the other successful candidates, project team, to be able to share what's going to happen next and how we can support you through the whole of your feasibility study. You may also be asked to present your work in progress or completed at one of the NICER annual conferences. So we're just about to have our NICER CE showcase in Birmingham this year, and we have invited along our existing feasibility studies to provide a presentation on their work to share with our attendees. You'll also be asked to provide information and updates initially for our dedicated project webpage, and I think Fiona might talk about this in a second, and it's to provide a short 10-minute presentation, usually alongside a PowerPoint, just to explain what your project is all about, so that people can be inspired and see what you're working with. And that's it, essentially, other than there will be a midterm, and it's quite light touch. It's a 2-pager midterm progress report that we will ask for you. We'll also provide you with a mentor, and also we'll be supporting you with any impact related activities as best that we can. We're just about to have a theory of change workshop with our existing feasibility study teams. And you'll have a final progress report as well. So I'm just going to hand back to Fiona for the final slide, because I didn't know whether you wanted to say something about examples of the flex funds, Fiona.
Yep, so if you go to the CE Hub website, you'll be able to see some examples of the feasibility studies that we've funded so far. So we've funded 8 to date, and just to highlight that these were across different themes. So our first call was associated with the 5 centres. The second call was broader than that. It was really around anything, any new technology or new solution that can support our adoption and implementation of circular economy. Whereas, as I mentioned before, this particular call is more focused around the social element of the circular economy. So if you go onto the website, you'll be able to click on these projects, and it will just give you a flavour for the type of thing that we have funded in the past. So as you can see, they're all quite diverse. The old Pants project is a feasibility study that looks at whether we can grow edible mushrooms on textile waste. So that's quite different from another one, for example, that looks at the use of recycled carbon black in printable electronic and photovoltaic devices. So they're all quite different, but hopefully if you go on the website, you'll get a feel for the types of projects that we've funded in the past.
You know, I've just shared a direct link to the funded examples and also one to the main page as well in the chat box for everybody.
Great, thank you. And then on this final slide, there's just a few contact details. So if you do have any queries, then please do get in touch with us at the CE Hub inbox, email address, and there's some other details on there for you as well. But I am conscious that we've got quite a few questions coming in. So I think, Imogen, if I can ask you to stop sharing your screen, and then I will have a look at the questions. If you do have any other questions, feel free to raise your hand or to pop them in the chat. So I'm just going to go from the top. So the first question from John is, I imagine the first step is to find a company to participate for me as an academic. Yes, as I said, we're looking for proposals that do collaborate with an industrial partner or a government partner, or potentially both. We are able to offer support with that. So if you are an early career researcher, that you might have an idea, but you're looking for an industrial partner, please do get in touch with us, and it might be that we can help you to identify a suitable partner. Simon asks, can the industry be from outside of the UK? Are there any geographical restrictions? So yes, the industrial partner can be from outside of the UK. However, the lead institution, so the lead applicant, must come from a UK university or other research organisation listed under the UKRI criteria for funding. So essentially, it needs to be led by a UK applicant, but any collaborators can be outside of the UK. Hi Sat, you ask if the concept has been awarded prior UKRI funding, is that a good or bad thing for this funding call? It's an interesting question. So I think we're really looking for new ideas as part of this call. So it's seed funding that will hopefully grow and demonstrate the feasibility of an idea. If you have previous research that has led then to the development of a new idea that hasn't been funded, then that's fine. But this isn't like sort of traditional UKRI funding where you have to demonstrate a long track record of existing funding because we're looking for new ideas and to attract new applicants. Hopefully that answers your question. Andrew asks, is this open to RTOs such as the CPI? Yes, so there are other research organisations that can receive UKRI funding, and these are listed under the eligibility criteria that I provided the link to in one of the slides. So if you follow that, it will take you to the UKRI page where you can see if your organisation is eligible or not. But if you have any questions about that, please do get in touch. Kasim asks, would you please clarify how the areas of interest you showed map to the 5 areas of the CE Hub and the centres? Yes, this is a good question. So as I mentioned, in our first round of feasibility study calls, we were looking for projects that closely align with the 5 centres. For this call, we have deliberately chosen an area where we see a gap in current research. We feel that there is a real gap around kind of existing knowledge of the social conditions that enable circular economy adoption and implementation. And some of the centres are working on the social element. For example, the Textile Circularity Centre have a key stream of their work that is looking at this, whereas other centres aren't covering it in so much detail. So you are very welcome to reach out to any of the centres and collaborate with them or ask their opinion on your proposal. However, in this call, it's not a requirement that you have to collaborate with one of the 5 centres. The proposal does have to complement the NICER programme. So as I said, it should be a proposal that helps us to achieve our overarching objectives of the NICER programme. But I repeat, it doesn't have to be conducted in collaboration with one of the centres this time. Some more questions. So does the concept have to be allied only to one of the 5 areas of the CE Hub? No, we are looking with this call to expand our thinking and our research and our application beyond what we're already doing. So it doesn't have to be, but again, it does have to help us to achieve our overarching objectives. And yes, this call is only open to academic organisations in collaboration with industrial or government partners. So this applications for this call do have to be led by a HEI in the UK. Do researchers need an academic affiliation? Yes, Gemma, they do. So as I said, there is a list of eligible organisations that can apply for UKRI funding, and we're using the same criteria for this call, and I provided the link in one of the earlier slides, but essentially you needed to either be a UK HEI, Higher Education Institute, or one of the other research organisations that are listed on the UKRI website. Dr. Afazal, can PhD students or postdocs be included in the proposal? Yes, definitely. So we are really trying to encourage early career researchers, so PhD students or postdocs or anyone that's defined as an early career researcher, to either be included in the proposal or even to lead the proposal. Kazim asks, part 2 of the CE Hub form should not contain data that identifies the applicants. Names and contacts may be avoided, but identification may be inferred from collaborating firms, names, countries, or locations. Yes, this is true. So where possible, when you're completing part 2 of the application form, if you could try not to include any details that would identify you or your team members, it's fine for you to include the companies that you might be partnering with, but we do go through a process when we receive the application forms of redacting any information that we think could identify you or your team before it goes out to review. So we're very tight on ensuring that we try where possible to make the review process anonymous. Tanu asks, will 80% or 100% of the costs need to be below 50k? So it is actually the 80% figure. So as Katie showed in the budget form, if your 80% figure is 50k or less, that's fine. So actually your total project costs could go above the 50k as long as the 80% full economic costs are less than 50k. That is fine. Will the panel pitch be online or in person? We plan for the panel pitch to be online. Gemma asks, research organisations including commercial research organisations. So I suggest that you just go to the UKRI website and through the link provided to look at the eligible research organisations, because there are some that are included in there. Is there a potential network of UK academic institutions that are participating and looking for an industrial partner? So again, Guy, thanks very much for the question. We are very happy to try and make introductions where possible. We do have a LinkedIn community. So there's the CE Hub LinkedIn group where we have lots of members of the NICER programme, and that could be a potential discussion forum if you are looking for an industrial partner, or the other way around if you're an industrial partner looking for an academic collaborator. Okay, yeah, and so Hilary, your question is similar. If you are an industrial partner looking for an academic to work with, then please do get in touch with us and we will do our best to introduce you. Great, Katie, on the kind of the networking side, are there any other suggestions that you have for participants looking for someone to collaborate with?
I'm not sure. This came up last time, actually, didn't it? I'm just thinking, is the question specifically about trying to find a HEI or an industrial partner?
I think we've been asked the questions both way around.
Yeah, both
so
ways.
I just recommend, I think there's quite a few groups on LinkedIn, or just getting in touch with us directly and then we can point you and
yeah, I think getting in touch with us directly, and I'll put the CE Hub email address in the chat again, is probably the best, because if you tell us a little bit about your project, we can probably think across the programme who might be helpful, but there's also the KTN, etc. So it might be best to contact us direct first, and then we can signpost you in the right direction. Yeah,
great. And John has asked, what's the best way to get in touch? So yeah, Katie's just going to pop the email address in the chat, but also the slides again will be shared after this on our website. So you'll be able to access the slides where all of the links have been provided. And also if you have any other colleagues or anyone that might be interested in this call that wasn't able to attend today, then they can watch this back. Okay, so I'll give it a few more minutes to see if anyone else has any other questions.
I've just put our email address again in the chat if anybody wants to contact us direct. And I think Imogen did it too as well. Thanks.
Yeah. But I mean, just sort of from my personal perspective, feasibility studies are such a fantastic way of testing out ideas, testing out concepts, also initiating those new collaborations, whether that's with another academic partner or an industrial collaborator. And they're relatively light touch in terms of it's a 4 or 5-page application form compared with kind of the usual applications for funding which are much longer than that. And we have seen some real success stories. So we've definitely seen several feasibility studies that have then gone on to be successful in applying for much bigger grants. And as Katie mentioned, at the Hub, we're really keen to support you on that journey, whether it's putting you in touch with the right people or giving you the opportunity to present your work if you're successful to a really wide audience. So yeah, I can't really recommend feasibility studies more highly in terms of getting that kind of foot on the ladder, and they're a really great way to introduce you to that broader funding landscape. So Kasim has asked Katie if you would mind running through part 3, the budget form again, if we've got a few minutes.
Yeah. So essentially, yeah, just to clarify, so we can only award up to 80% of the full economic cost. So your total, basically. So we've got a remaining budget whereby we could fund up to 50,000 at full economic cost. So essentially, we would be awarding you £40,000 to be able to cover those costs. So for the additional 10, you'd be looking from support from your own HEI or indeed your industrial collaborating partner as well. Does that help? I can't hear a response.
Yeah, thank you, Katie. I think you also mentioned that the overall budget could be way above 50,000 if it's funded from elsewhere. Does it affect you if, for instance, the overall budget appears to be 250,000 and we are only asking for this 80% of it?
I think, oh, well, yeah. I mean, I don't, I'll go back to Fiona on this one, because that sounds like it might be beyond the scope. And this is for seed funding, so to get projects off the ground. So I don't know whether you want to talk about the sort of T rating.
Yeah, I think, Kasim, it would very much depend on a case-by-case basis. We're really, we would welcome projects that are match funded by industrial partners. So if the industrial partner was putting a cash input into the project, which meant that the total project costs were 200,000 and you were just asking us for 50,000, for example. But as Katie mentioned, we are very much looking for feasibility study funding. So it's kind of a seed fund to lead on to other things. But yeah, I mean, get in touch with us if you do have an idea and you've got a question over budget. Please do reach out to us and we can let you know.
Thank you.
So Sabrine has asked, can we contact the successful applicants in advice as the do's and don'ts, caveats, etc.? Yes, I'm sure they would be more than happy to. Again, feel free to come through us if you'd like to be put in touch with a particular feasibility study applicant or one of those successful ones. Great. Okay. Well, I think that is all the questions. But as I mentioned, the slides and the recording of the webinar will be available through the Hub website. We should get that up today or tomorrow. And if you do have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us on the CE Hub email address. But thank you all very much for your interest and for attending. And we look forward to receiving your applications. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.